Marcus Chen adjusted his formal diplomatic jacket one more time as he walked through the gleaming corridors of the Zolonian trade station. The artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth normal, making each step deliberate and measured. Around him, the walls pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to breathe with the station's life support systems. After 6 months of negotiations, today would finally seal the trade agreement between Earth and the Zolonian Empire. The Zolonians were unlike any species humanity had encountered in their short time among the stars. Tall and elegant, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water, they possessed a grace that made even their simplest movements appear choreographed. Their society valued beauty above almost everything else, from their architecture to their clothing to their complex social rituals. Marcus had spent years learning their customs, their language, and their intricate protocols. The United Earth government had chosen him specifically for this mission because of his ability to adapt to alien cultures. What they hadn't mentioned in his briefing was how challenging it would be to navigate the subtle romantic undertones that seemed woven into every Zolonian social interaction. He paused before the ornate door to the ceremonial chambers, checking his reflection in its polished surface. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his suit immaculate. Everything had to be perfect today. The Zolonians judged worth by presentation, and humanity's future trading rights in this sector depended on making the right impression. The door dilated silently, revealing a vast chamber filled with Zolonian nobility. Their clothing shifted through spectrums of color that human eyes could barely process, creating a kaleidoscope effect that was both beautiful and disorienting. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Thirolin, the Zolonian trade representative he had been working with for months. She was breathtaking, even by Zolonian standards. Her skin currently displayed deep purples and silvers that complemented the flowing gown she wore, a garment that seemed to be cut from liquid starlight itself. As their eyes met across the room, her skin shifted to warmer tones, a sign of pleasure that Marcus had learned to recognize. The next few hours passed in a blur of ceremonial exchanges, formal speeches, and ritual presentations. Marcus found himself falling into the familiar rhythm of diplomatic protocol, but his attention kept drifting to Thirolin. There was something different about her today, an intensity in her gaze that he hadn't noticed before. When the official proceedings concluded, the gathered nobles began to disperse into smaller social groups. This was the part Marcus found most challenging, the informal networking that was actually more important than any of the formal ceremonies. Zolonian society ran on personal relationships and subtle social cues that could make or break entire trade agreements. Thirolin approached him as he stood near one of the viewing ports, watching the stars wheel slowly past. The station rotated to provide artificial gravity, creating the illusion that they were stationary while the universe moved around them. "Ambassador Chen," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality that all Zolonians possessed. "You seem thoughtful tonight." "Just reflecting on how far we've come," Marcus replied, turning to face her fully. 6 months ago, I wasn't even sure if humans and Zolonians could find common ground. Now look at us." Her skin shifted through a cascade of colors, amusement, warmth, something else he couldn't quite identify. "Your species continues to surprise us. When we first encountered humans, our scientists predicted you would be too primitive for meaningful cooperation, too rigid, too limited. And now? Now I think perhaps it is we who are limited." She moved closer, and Marcus caught a hint of her natural scent, like ozone and exotic flowers. "Your people see beauty in function, in purpose. We have much to learn from each other." The conversation continued for another hour, gradually moving away from trade negotiations and toward more personal topics. Marcus found himself genuinely enjoying her company in a way that went beyond diplomatic necessity. There was an intelligence in her eyes, a curiosity about humanity that matched his own fascination with her people. As the evening wore on, Other guests began to excuse themselves. Soon, Marcus and Theorlin found themselves nearly alone in the vast chamber, standing before a massive window that offered a view of the nebula where the trade station was positioned. "Your formal wear tonight is quite striking," Marcus said, genuinely impressed by the artistry of her gown. The garment seemed to capture and reflect the light of distant stars, creating patterns that shifted and flowed like living things. "That dress looks amazing on you." The moment the words left his mouth, he knew something had changed. Therolin's skin, which had been cycling through warm, friendly colors, suddenly went completely still. The shifting patterns froze into rigid geometric shapes, a reaction Marcus had never seen before. Her large, luminous eyes widened, and she took a step backward. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees, though Marcus knew that was impossible. She began, then stopped, her musical voice faltering for the first time since he had known her. Without another word, Theorlin turned and walked swiftly toward a door Marcus hadn't even noticed, a smaller, more private entrance that must lead to her personal quarters. The soft sound of her footsteps echoed in the suddenly empty chamber. Just before she reached the threshold, she paused and looked back at him over her shoulder. Her expression was unreadable, a mixture of surprise, confusion, and something that might have been fear. "Good night, Ambassador Chen," she said quietly, and then she was gone. The door sealed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving Marcus alone in the ceremonial chamber with only the stars for company. He stood there for several minutes, replaying the conversation in his mind. What had he said wrong? He had complimented her appearance, which should have been appropriate by Zalonian standards. Their entire culture was built around aesthetic appreciation. Marcus pulled out his portable translator, running through the conversation again to make sure he hadn't made a linguistic error. But no, his words had been clear and properly constructed in formal Zalonian. "That dress looks amazing on you," had been translated correctly. The implications began to dawn on him slowly. In all his months of preparation and cultural study, there must have been something crucial he had missed. Some nuance of Zalonian society that the human anthropologists hadn't understood. He thought about Therolin's reaction, the way her skin had gone rigid, the fear in her eyes, the way she had fled. This wasn't embarrassment or offense. This was something deeper, more serious. Marcus activated his communicator and contacted the Earth diplomatic vessel that was docked with the station. "This is Ambassador Chen. I need to speak with Dr. Reyes immediately." Sarah Reyes was the expedition's xenoanthropologist, a woman who had spent her career studying alien cultures. If anyone could help him understand what had just happened, it would be her. "Marcus, it's past midnight. The ceremony went well, I hope?" "The ceremony was fine, but something happened afterward. I think I may have made a serious cultural mistake." There was a pause. "What kind of mistake?" Marcus explained the evening's events, describing Therolin's reaction to his compliment in detail. As he spoke, he could hear Dr. Reyes pulling up her research files. "Oh no," she said finally. "Marcus, what exactly did you say to her?" "I told her that her dress looked amazing on her. It was a simple compliment." Another long pause. When Dr. Reyes spoke again, her voice was tight with concern. "Marcus, I need you to listen to me very carefully. In Zalonian culture, commenting specifically on someone's personal garments, especially formal wear, isn't just a compliment. It's a formal declaration of romantic intent. It's essentially the same as asking someone to marry you." The bottom dropped out of Marcus's stomach. "What?" "Formal Zalonian garments are considered extensions of the person's soul. They're only worn during the most important ceremonies and life events. When you complimented her dress specifically, you were telling her that you found her soul beautiful and wanted to bond with it permanently. Marcus sank into one of the ornate Zalonian chairs, his mind reeling. But she seemed interested in me throughout the evening. Her skin colors, her body language. Zalonians can be attracted to someone without wanting to enter into a formal bonding. Their romantic customs are incredibly complex, with dozens of different levels of relationship. What you just did was skip about 15 steps and go straight to the most serious commitment their culture recognizes. So when she closed the door, she was probably in shock. Marcus, this could be a disaster for the trade negotiations. If word gets out that the human ambassador made an inappropriate bonding proposal to the trade representative, it could be seen as an insult to the entire Zalonian government. They might interpret it as humanity trying to gain unfair advantage through personal manipulation. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. Is there any way to fix this? I don't know. Zalonian bonding customs are sacred to them. There might be a formal way to retract the proposal, but it would require understanding protocols that we simply don't have access to. The Zalonians guard their most intimate cultural practices very carefully. As Dr. Reyes continued explaining the potential ramifications, Marcus found himself staring out at the nebula beyond the viewing port. Somewhere out there were hundreds of human colonies, trade routes, and diplomatic relationships that could all be jeopardized by his innocent mistake. But even as the weight of the situation settled on his shoulders, part of him couldn't forget the look in Theralin's eyes just before she had closed the door. It hadn't been entirely fear or shock. There had been something else there, a moment of consideration, perhaps even longing. Marcus ended the call with Dr. Reyes and made his way back to his own quarters, his mind churning with possibilities and problems. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and he would need to find a way to navigate the cultural minefield he had unknowingly entered. As he prepared for sleep, one thought kept returning to him. Theralin had said that humans continued to surprise the Zalonians, that perhaps it was her people who were limited in their thinking. Maybe, just maybe, this crisis could become an opportunity to bridge the gap between their species in ways no one had imagined. Marcus woke to the harsh sound of his emergency communicator. The station's artificial dawn was still hours away, but the urgent red light pulsing from his device told him that something had gone very wrong. "Ambassador Chen here," he said, sitting up quickly and trying to clear the sleep from his voice. "Marcus, we have a problem." Dr. Reyes's voice was strained, speaking in the clipped tones that meant she was in full crisis management mode. "The Zalonian High Council has called an emergency session. They're demanding to speak with you immediately." Marcus checked the time display. It was barely 4 hours since he had gone to sleep. "What happened?" "Word of your proposal has reached the council. Apparently, Thyrolin was required by law to report any formal bonding declarations made to her. The council is calling it a grave insult to Zalonian sovereignty." The weight of the situation hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had hoped to have time to find a solution, to consult with experts and craft a careful response. Instead, he was being thrown directly into the fire. "How long do I have?" 20 minutes. Captain Morrison wants to brief you on our ship first. The Zalonians have also requested that you bring no weapons and come alone, which our security team is not happy about." Marcus was already pulling on his formal diplomatic attire. "Tell them I'll be there in 10. The brief journey to the Earth vessel gave Marcus a few minutes to think. The corridors of the trade station, which had seemed so welcoming the night before, now felt cold and hostile. Zalonian crew members he passed avoided eye contact, their skin displaying the neutral gray tones that indicated formal displeasure. Captain Morrison was waiting for him in the briefing room, along with Dr. Reyes and Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, the ship's tactical officer. All three looked like they had been awake all night. "Sit down, Marcus," Morrison said without preamble. "We need to discuss your options." Marcus took his seat at the briefing table. What exactly are the Zolonians claiming? Dr. Reyes pulled up a holographic display showing the relevant cultural texts she had been studying. According to Zolonian law, making an unsolicited bonding proposal to a government official is considered an attempt to corrupt the political process. It's seen as trying to use personal relationships to gain unfair advantage in negotiations. But that wasn't my intention. Intention doesn't matter under Zolonian justice, Lieutenant Commander Kim interjected. What matters is the action and its potential impact. They're treating this as a serious diplomatic incident. Captain Morrison leaned forward. Marcus, I need to ask you directly. Is there any truth to their accusation? Were you trying to use personal relationships to influence the trade negotiations? Marcus met his captain's gaze steadily. No, sir. It was a genuine mistake. I thought I was giving her a simple compliment about her appearance. Morrison nodded, apparently satisfied with his answer. Then we need to figure out how to convince them of that. Dr. Reyes, what are our options? The xenoanthropologist looked uncomfortable. The traditional response would be for Marcus to undergo a ritual called the cleansing of intent. It's designed to determine whether someone's actions were genuine or manipulative. What does that involve? Marcus asked. We don't know exactly. It's one of their most closely guarded ceremonies. What we do know is that it's extremely dangerous for non-Zolonians. The few records we have suggest it involves both physical and mental trials that are specifically designed for Zolonian physiology and psychology. Lieutenant Commander Kim shook her head. Absolutely not. We can't allow our ambassador to submit to an alien trial that could kill him. If I don't, Marcus said slowly, what happens to the trade agreement? What happens to human expansion in this sector? The silence that followed was answer enough. Without Zolonian cooperation, humanity's presence in this region of space would become untenable. Dozens of colonies would lose access to essential resources. The economic impact would be devastating. There has to be another way, Captain Morrison said finally. Some diplomatic solution that doesn't require risking Marcus's life. Dr. Reyes was scrolling through more cultural data. There is one possibility. If Marcus could prove that his mistake was the result of cultural ignorance rather than malicious intent, the Zolonians might accept a formal apology and compensation. What kind of compensation? That's the problem. For an offense of this magnitude, traditional compensation would be significant, possibly the entire trade agreement plus additional concessions. Marcus felt his stomach clench. So either I risk my life in their trial, or humanity loses everything we've worked for. Those appear to be our options, yes. Marcus stood up and walked to the viewing port, looking out at the Zolonian station. Somewhere over there, Thirolin was probably preparing for the council meeting, still dealing with the shock of his unintended proposal. He wondered what she was thinking, whether she blamed him for putting her in this impossible position. I'll do the trial, he said finally. Marcus, Dr. Reyes started to protest. No. He turned back to face the group. I made this mess. It's my responsibility to fix it. Besides, we don't actually know that the trial will kill me. Maybe humans are tougher than the Zolonians think. Captain Morrison studied him for a long moment. Are you sure about this? Once you commit to their trial, there's no backing out. We won't be able to extract you if things go wrong. Marcus thought about all the human colonies depending on this trade agreement, about the families who had risked everything to build new lives among the stars. I'm sure. The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. Dr. Reyes briefed him on everything they knew about Zolonian trial customs, while Lieutenant Commander Kim helped him prepare contingency plans for various scenarios. Captain Morrison contacted Earth Command to inform them of the situation and receive final authorization for Marcus's decision. When the time came, Marcus made his way back to the Zolonian station alone. The corridor that led to the High Council chambers was lined with Zolonian guards, their skin displaying the deep red patterns that indicated they were prepared for violence. Marcus kept his hands visible and his movements slow and deliberate. The council chamber was even more imposing than the ceremonial hall where the trade negotiations had been held. 12 Zolonian counselors sat in a semicircle, their formal robes shifting through patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. At the center sat the High Arbiter, an ancient Zolonian whose skin had turned permanently silver with age. Thirlin stood to one side, her eyes focused on the floor. She was wearing simple gray robes instead of her usual colorful attire, a sign of mourning or shame in Zolonian culture. "Ambassador Chen," the High Arbiter said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You stand accused of attempting to corrupt a Zolonian official through inappropriate romantic manipulation. How do you answer these charges?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Honored Arbiter, I acknowledge that my words were inappropriate. However, I maintain that they were the result of cultural ignorance, not malicious intent." A murmur ran through the council. The High Arbiter raised one hand for silence. "You claim ignorance as your defense. Yet you have spent months among us, learning our ways. How can you expect us to believe that such ignorance is genuine?" "Because humans learn differently than Zolonians," Marcus replied. "We focus on practical knowledge, trade laws, diplomatic protocols, technical specifications. The deeper cultural meanings, the intimate social customs, these are not easily accessible to outsiders." "And yet ignorance is no excuse for offense," one of the counselors said. "Would you have us excuse every cultural crime committed by species too primitive to understand our ways?" Marcus felt his temper flare at the word primitive, but forced himself to remain calm. Getting angry now would only prove their point. "I'm not asking for an excuse, Honored Council. I'm asking for the chance to prove my intent through your own traditional methods. I formally request to undergo the cleansing of intent." This time, the murmur from the council was louder. Several counselors leaned forward, apparently surprised by his request. The High Arbiter's eyes narrowed. "You understand what you are asking for, human? The cleansing is not designed for your species. It will test every aspect of your being, physical, mental, and spiritual. Many Zolonians have failed the trial and suffered permanent damage." "I understand the risks," Marcus replied. "But I also understand the importance of proving my honesty to the council and to my friend, Ambassador Thirlin." At the mention of her name, Thirlin looked up sharply. For just a moment, her skin flickered through colors that Marcus interpreted as surprise and something that might have been hope. The High Arbiter conferred with the other counselors in rapid Zolonian, their voices too low for Marcus to follow. Finally, he turned back to Marcus. "Very well. We accept your request for the cleansing of intent. However, given your alien nature, we will modify the trial to account for your limitations." Marcus bristled slightly at the word limitations, but said nothing. "The trial will consist of 3 challenges," the High Arbiter continued. "First, you will face the test of endurance, to determine if your body possesses the strength to support honest intent. Second, the test of clarity, to see if your mind can perceive truth without distortion. Finally, the test of purpose, to reveal whether your heart seeks to serve others or only yourself. And if I fail, then you will be declared guilty of the charges against you, and humanity will be banned from Zolonian space permanently. Your species will be marked as untrustworthy, and word will be sent to all allied governments." The stakes couldn't be higher. Marcus nodded. "I accept these terms. The trial begins at the next dawn cycle. You have until then to prepare yourself." The High Arbiter's expression was unreadable. "Use this time wisely, human. Your species' future may depend on how well you perform." As the council dismissed, Marcus found himself walking back to his quarters with Thirolin. They moved through the corridors in silence, the weight of the situation making conversation difficult. Finally, as they reached the diplomatic wing, Thirolin spoke. "Marcus, why are you doing this? You could simply apologize and accept the compensation requirements." Marcus paused, considering his answer. "Because sometimes the right thing to do isn't the safe thing to do. Your people deserve to know that my words came from respect, not manipulation. And my people deserve a representative who will fight for them, even when the odds are against him." Therolin's skin shifted through a complex pattern of colors: surprise, admiration, and something Marcus couldn't quite identify. "Your species truly is unusual. Most beings would choose safety over principle." "Maybe that's why humans and Zalonians need each other," Marcus suggested. "We each have strengths the other lacks." As they parted ways, Thirolin touched his arm briefly, a gesture of support that gave Marcus hope. Tomorrow would bring the greatest challenge of his life, but at least he wouldn't face it without allies. Back in his quarters, Marcus spent the remaining hours before dawn in preparation. He exercised to ready his body, meditated to clear his mind, and reviewed everything he knew about human-Zalonian relations to focus his purpose. Whatever the trials brought, he would face them as a representative of humanity at its best. The future of two species hung in the balance, and Marcus Chen was determined not to let them down. But first, he would have to survive the diplomatic storm that was surely coming. The stars continued to wheel past his window as Marcus finally drifted off to sleep, unaware that his simple compliment had set in Modi dawn came too quickly for Marcus's liking. He had managed perhaps 2 hours of actual sleep, spending the rest of the time in meditation and mental preparation. As he dressed in simple clothes suitable for physical trials, his hands were steady despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. The message from the High Council arrived precisely at sunrise. He was to report to the trial chambers immediately. Marcus made his way through corridors filled with Zalonian citizens who had gathered to witness the unprecedented event of an alien undergoing the cleansing of intent. The trial chambers were unlike anything Marcus had seen on the station. Located deep in the central core, they appeared to be carved from a single piece of crystalline material that pulsed with internal light. As Marcus entered, the walls responded to his presence, shifting from cool blue to a neutral white. The High Arbiter stood waiting, along with 2 other figures Marcus didn't recognize: a tall Zalonian wearing robes that marked him as a spiritual leader, and a shorter, more muscular Zalonian whose skin displayed the permanent scarring patterns of a warrior caste member. "Ambassador Chen," the High Arbiter said formally, "allow me to introduce your trial supervisors. This is Mystic Valendra, who will oversee the test of clarity, and War Leader Corvain, who will conduct the test of endurance." Marcus bowed respectfully to each in turn. "I am honored by your presence." "Before we begin," the High Arbiter continued, "I must ask one final time. Are you certain you wish to proceed? There is no shame in withdrawing now and accepting the diplomatic consequences." Marcus thought of the human colonies scattered across this sector, of the families who had risked everything for a chance at new lives among the stars. "I am certain, honored Arbiter." "Then let us begin with the test of endurance." War Leader Corvain stepped forward, his scarred skin displaying patterns that Marcus had learned indicated respect for a worthy opponent. "Human, this trial will test not just your physical strength, but your will to persevere when your body demands surrender. Many Zalonians have failed this test. Are you prepared?" "I'm ready," Marcus replied, though his heart was pounding. The chamber around them began to shift and change. The crystalline walls extended upward, creating a cylindrical space perhaps 50 meters tall. Platforms of varying sizes materialized at different heights, creating a complex 3-dimensional obstacle course. The test of endurance requires you to reach the summit platform, Corvain explained, gesturing toward a small ledge near the top of the chamber. However, the platforms will respond to your presence by becoming increasingly unstable. The higher you climb, the more they will shift and move beneath your feet. Marcus studied the course, noting that the platforms were spaced just far enough apart to require significant leaps between them. For a Zalonian with their longer limbs and natural grace, this would be challenging but achievable. For a human, additionally, Corvain continued, the air will become thinner as you ascend, and the platforms will generate an energy field that will cause increasing pain the longer you remain in contact with them. Marcus nodded, understanding the true nature of this test. It wasn't just about physical capability, it was about the willingness to continue, despite discomfort, to push forward when every instinct screamed to stop. You may begin when ready. Marcus approached the first platform, a large, stable-looking disc about 3 meters off the ground. As soon as his feet touched its surface, he felt a mild, tingling sensation, not painful yet, but noticeable. The platform remained steady beneath him. The second platform was smaller and positioned about 4 meters away and 2 meters higher. Marcus took a running leap, landing hard but maintaining his balance. The tingling was stronger now, like a mild electrical current running through his body. By the fifth platform, Marcus was beginning to understand the true challenge. The platforms were becoming increasingly unstable, shifting and rotating as he moved across them. The energy field was causing genuine discomfort now. Not quite pain, but a constant draining sensation that made every movement more difficult. What the Zalonians hadn't anticipated was how this challenge would play to human strengths. Where Zalonian physiology was optimized for grace and precision, humans had evolved for endurance and adaptability. Marcus's ancestors had been persistence hunters, capable of chasing prey across vast distances by simply refusing to give up. As he climbed higher, the platforms became more erratic in their movements. Several times, Marcus had to make desperate leaps to platforms that were rotating or sliding away from him. His muscles burned with effort, and the energy field was now causing actual pain, sharp jolts that made his teeth clench. But he kept climbing. The watching Zalonians began to murmur among themselves. No alien had ever attempted this trial before, and most had expected the human to fall within the first few minutes. Instead, Marcus was demonstrating a stubborn persistence that impressed even war leader Corvain. When Marcus reached the 20th platform, barely 10 meters from the summit, the real test began. The air was now so thin that each breath was a struggle, and the energy field was causing waves of agony to shoot through his nervous system. The platform beneath him was spinning slowly while tilting at random angles. Marcus paused, gathering his strength and studying the remaining platforms. The final jumps would require perfect timing and absolute commitment. There could be no hesitation, no second guessing. He thought about why he was here, not just for the trade agreement, but for what it represented. Humanity's place among the stars, the right to be treated as equals rather than primitives, the chance to prove that humans belonged in the galactic community. With a roar of determination that echoed through the chamber, Marcus launched himself toward the next platform. His landing was less than perfect, but he rolled with the impact and immediately prepared for the next jump. Pain was irrelevant. Fatigue was temporary. The mission was everything. 3 more desperate leaps brought him to the summit platform. As his feet touched the small, stable disk at the top of the chamber, the energy field shut off and the artificial atmosphere returned to normal. Marcus collapsed to his knees, gasping but victorious. War leader Corvain's skin displayed patterns of genuine amazement. Remarkable. Your endurance exceeds anything in our records. The test of endurance is complete. You have passed. After a brief rest period, Mystic Valendra stepped forward for the test of clarity. The chamber transformed again, this time becoming a spherical space filled with swirling lights and geometric patterns. The test of clarity requires you to perceive truth through deception, Valendra explained. You will be shown scenes and asked to identify what is real and what is illusion. The challenge is that the illusions are designed to appeal to your deepest desires and fears. The test began immediately. Marcus found himself standing in what appeared to be his childhood home on Earth. His parents, dead for over a decade, stood before him smiling. "Son," his father said, "we're so proud of what you've accomplished. Why don't you stay here with us? You don't need to prove anything more." The illusion was perfect down to the smallest detail, the way his mother's eyes crinkled when she smiled, the particular inflection in his father's voice. For a moment, Marcus was genuinely tempted to accept this comfortable lie, but he forced himself to remember why he was here. "You're not real," he said quietly. "My parents are gone, and I have responsibilities to the living." The scene dissolved, replaced by another illusion. This time, he stood in the council chambers, watching as the Zalonians announced that the trade agreement would proceed without any trials or tests. Thirelin stood beside him, her skin glowing with happiness. "See how easy it could be?" the illusion Thirelin said. "Just tell them what they want to hear. Compromise a little. No one has to suffer." Marcus shook his head. "Truth isn't negotiable. If I lie now, I'll have to keep lying forever." More illusions followed. Scenes of personal success, professional acclaim, romantic fulfillment. Each one was designed to tempt him away from his purpose, to make him forget why he was enduring these trials. The final illusion was the cruelest. He stood on the bridge of a human starship, watching as Zalonian vessels opened fire on human colonies. Cities burned as he failed to prevent the war that his cultural mistake had started. "This is your future if you continue," a voice whispered. "Billions will die because of your pride. Withdraw now and save them." For a long moment, Marcus wavered. The scene before him was so vivid, so convincing. But then he noticed a small detail. The star patterns in the background were wrong for this sector of space. "No," he said firmly. "This is just fear talking. The truth is that standing up for what's right sometimes involves risk. But that's what makes it worthwhile." The illusions faded, and Mystic Valendra nodded approvingly. "Your mind sees clearly through deception. The test of clarity is complete. You have passed." The final test, the test of purpose, required no transformation of the chamber. Instead, the High Arbiter himself stepped forward. "Ambassador Chen, this trial is simple in concept, but difficult in execution. I will ask you one question, and you must answer with complete honesty. Your words will be analyzed by our most sophisticated truth detection equipment. Any deception will be immediately apparent." Marcus straightened, ready for whatever question might come. "Given everything you have experienced here, everything you now know about the risks and consequences of human-Zalonian relations, do you still believe that our species should be allies? Not for trade benefits, not for political advantage, but because it is the right thing for both our peoples." Marcus considered the question carefully. He thought about the cultural misunderstandings, the near-impossible trials, the prejudices on both sides. He thought about Thirelin's reaction to his innocent compliment, about the Council's assumption that humans were too primitive for true partnership, but he also thought about the genuine curiosity he had seen in Zalonian eyes, their capacity for beauty and grace. He thought about the potential for mutual learning and growth, the chance to bridge the gap between two very different species. "Yes," he said simply, "I believe our alliance would make both species stronger. Humans bring determination, adaptability, and a willingness to challenge assumptions. Zalonians bring wisdom, artistic vision, and deep cultural knowledge. Together, we could achieve things that neither could accomplish alone." The truth detection equipment hummed quietly for several moments. Finally, the High Arbiter nodded. The test of purpose is complete. You have answered with complete honesty. He paused, then continued. Ambassador Chen, in 300 years of conducting the cleansing of intent, we have never seen anyone pass all 3 trials with such distinction. Your endurance surpassed our greatest warriors. Your clarity of thought exceeded our wisest mystics. Your purpose proved pure beyond any doubt. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him, but the High Arbiter wasn't finished. More importantly, you have demonstrated that human beings possess qualities we had not recognized. Your species' reputation for stubbornness, which we previously saw as a flaw, is actually a form of noble persistence. Your tendency toward emotional decision-making, which we dismissed as primitive, is actually a sophisticated form of moral reasoning. The High Arbiter looked around at the assembled observers, his expression thoughtful. Perhaps it is we who have been limited in our thinking. The accusations against you are dismissed. The trade agreement will proceed as originally negotiated. As the formal trial concluded and the observers began to disperse, Thirlin approached Marcus. Her skin was cycling through colors he had never seen before, patterns that seemed to indicate profound respect mixed with something warmer. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology. When you complimented my dress, my first reaction was shock, then fear. I thought perhaps you were like other species we have encountered, trying to use personal relationships for political gain. And now I understand that humans express appreciation differently than we do. What seemed inappropriate to me was actually a generous gesture from someone who sees beauty in others." She paused, her skin shifting to warmer tones. "I also realized that your accidental proposal revealed something important. You truly do see beauty in our culture, in our people. That kind of genuine appreciation is rare in interspecies relations." Marcus smiled. "So what happens now?" Thyrlin's expression became more serious. "Now we learn from each other. Your trials today showed the Council something important about human character, but they also showed me something important about the kind of person you are." As they walked back toward the diplomatic quarters, Thyrlin continued. "There's something else you should know. The traditional Zolonian response to an accidental bonding proposal is to evaluate whether the accident reveals a deeper truth. Sometimes our unconscious minds express things our conscious minds aren't ready to acknowledge." Marcus felt his heart skip slightly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that perhaps your mistake wasn't entirely a mistake. And perhaps my shock wasn't entirely displeasure." She stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "In human terms, I believe you would say that I would be honored to get to know you better, not as a trade representative to an ambassador, but as one person to another." Marcus felt a genuine smile spread across his face for the first time in days. "I'd like that very much." As they continued toward their quarters, Marcus reflected on the events of the past 2 days. What had started as a diplomatic disaster had become something much more important, a genuine connection between 2 beings from different worlds. The trade agreement would succeed, opening new opportunities for human expansion and Zolonian prosperity. But more than that, Marcus and Thyrlin had proven that understanding between species was possible, even when it seemed impossible at first. Sometimes, Marcus thought, the most important discoveries come from the biggest mistakes. And sometimes, getting things wrong is the first step toward getting them right. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities neither species had imagined. And it all started with a compliment about a dress and a quietly closing door, on events that would change the relationship between humanity and the Zolonian Empire forever.